I know.
Quick
Every
start.
time he gets me, I'm waiting for the disclaimer still.
Good morning.
By the way, the disclaimer is this isn't medical advice and,
Yeah, don't.
yeah, just information.
We're just being informational. And also don't hold any of my jokes against me or my family or friends.
Yeah, I try not to hold you against me.
I know.
At all.
You haven't been rolling with me
Okay.
lately. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I want to talk about how you dodge me all the time.
Oh.
I've asked you 3
When?
times.
When?
And you have said no 3 times.
Oh, that's revisionist history.
I don't know what that word means, but
Yeah,
it's BS.
fake news is what it is.
I literally asked you 3 different times recently, and you said no.
Well, then we're going to have to go.
Such a jerk.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
nice
you
to
don't
see you too.
care. I've had a colonoscopy recently.
No, I wanted to roll with you after that.
Yeah, I know you did.
I'll catch you while you're loose. A
Oh, I was loose.
little loopy
Oh,
in the butt.
that was something.
Yeah, so people don't know. Chris had a colonoscopy. He tries to get one once a week.
Oh, jeez.
It's kind of weird, but
Ugh,
Carrie puts up with it.
it ain't fun.
It's an expensive hobby of yours.
No. I can't imagine anybody that would freaking look forward
Is
to
there
that.
anything that would cause you to have a colonoscopy like regularly?
Yep.
Really?
Strong family history of colon cancer. There's a condition
How
called...
regular then?
Well, it
Annual?
depends. No, not annual, but it depends on the age of onset. Usually if you have a first-degree relative, like a father or mother or brother, that's,
But not like monthly.
No.
Oh.
No. It's surveillance, basically.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. If there's something that you'd have to
Well,
get monthly.
since we're talking about it,
Yeah.
at age 50, without a family history, you should get one done. It's the most preventable cancer around. If you catch it early, I think the cure rate is over 90%. If you catch it late, it's almost universally fatal.
Oh, okay.
So the prep is the worst part, getting your bowel clean so they can
Right.
look in there with the scope, right?
Yeah.
And basically if they see little polyps developing, which are precursors, they'll snip them and then send them to pathology to see if they're precancerous or
That's
not.
what they did to me.
So it's a good, it's definitely a smart thing to do. But yeah, if you had a family history of colon cancer, there's certain genetic conditions called familial polyposis. You don't need to know that, but where you definitely want to get them done early. But again, the gastroenterologists have guidelines on how often. Since I have family history, it's every 5 years for me.
Yeah, I think I had one about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, you know the deal, dude.
yeah.
The prep sucks, man.
Do people ever talk about their colonoscopy doctor? Like, hey, who's your guy? You should hook me up with him.
No.
No. He's very gentle with the
Dude,
rubber
you're
gloves.
out anyway, dude.
I wasn't out.
Where did you go? Jeez,
This is a
dude.
good place on Highway 99.
I bet. It's one of those back room things. Dude,
Golden
no.
Spa.
Dude, I had Versed and Propofol, my friend. I was out.
Yeah, the doctor made or not the doctor, but the nurse made a point and goes, oh, look, he's watching. Because I was watching the camera screen, and I was just watching, like...
Yeah, I don't want any part of that.
What's that movie where they get shrunk down and they go in, like, up someone's...
Honey, I Shrunk the Kid?
I thought it was something else. And then,
Where they have a little submarine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I forgot what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, but
Yeah.
It was like I was watching
And
that.
the white blood cells were attacking them. And,
Right.
Yeah.
And
Magic School Bus?
I don't forget what it was called. But anyway.
But Encino Man. But the
That's definitely not right.
yeah, they made a note that I was watching the camera.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
Yeah.
Got to see what my innards look like. With that, we're gonna segue.
Please do.
Liv, you had a question that you were just asking before we went on live, and I
Oh.
was like, "This is a good question for the podcast."
Yeah.
What you got, kid?
I was curious. Are people who do jujitsu more beat up than people who just don't exercise at all?
You mean at any given day?
Well, you know how like as people get older, like they're gonna have like pains and stuff like that. But if you don't work out, you're gonna be weaker in certain ways.
Yep.
But then also if you do anything active, you're more likely to get injuries and
There's also this popular YouTube video that I've been seeing that's like getting a lot of. The guy doesn't have many subscribers or anything, but he did this one video and it's like blowing up, tens of thousands of views, and he's like, "How jiu-jitsu ruined my body."
oh that too. Yeah.
And he's a purple
You
belt.
keep hearing stuff like that.
And,
So, Look,
yeah.
it's a combat martial art. Okay, first of all, I would argue it's probably safer than for long-term health and striking arts, like if you're sparring and getting cracked in the head.
Right.
But that whole argument, it's like, man, sure. And you know, we always talk about how to prevent injury in jiu-jitsu and all the proactive stuff you can do.
Yeah.
But it's totally possible to do if you're smart about it and you really do. You take your off the mat training seriously as far as your mobility, your strength training. And then, you know, like we've all talked about a bunch of times, picking your training partners, not going 1,000% every damn roll. No, it's good for longevity, but those people that say that, oh, it's beat up my body. Well, you might want to look in the mirror. You probably, it's tough, man. You're sore. You got to recover. But as opposed to not exercising, no, I guarantee you I'm going to be better off at 54 doing jiu-jitsu than not exercising, because if I do get injured and I've never exercised, I have poor muscle mass, my resilience is super low. I'm not going to recover well. And we see that all the time when people get injured. You hear about this all the time with as people age, they'll fall and break a hip. And then they're kind of done.
Yeah.
Right? Because they already have almost no muscle mass. They have osteoporosis from not loading their skeleton. And so any little fall like that's catastrophic, where if you took the same age person that has done grappling consistently and some strength training, they're going to be much more resilient.
He might walk around with a neck like Batman, but if he falls, he's going to be all right.
But again, it's all about training smartly, not getting stacked and the whole 9 yards, you know, developing a game so you're not playing inverted guard.
I feel like that out of the extracurricular stuff that kind of comes with the lifestyle of like a jiu-jitsu practitioner, that not everyone does, but the people that I guess are a little bit more lifestyle oriented with it goes a long ways. And that's the stretching, the recovery stuff, maybe supplements, maybe red light therapies or yoga, whatever. Stuff that kind of comes along with that kind of lifestyle really helps with that longevity. And
well, of course, but that's your mindset though. Or you can be a dummy and not worry about your recovery.
Hear that, Elias?
Train, you know, like ADCC death matches for every roll.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's all how you approach it. You know, people can, it's a tool.
Yeah.
I mean, you can misuse it.
Right.
I think another reason why I was wondering about this too is because I was telling my sister about how I frequently get like sports massages done, you know, to help with like recovery and like, you know, because we're using our bodies in ways that other people don't.
Yeah.
And so, but I noticed that with a lot of like competitive athletes and stuff like that within jiu-jitsu, they have to do that kind of stuff as well. And obviously normal layman people who don't do this kind of stuff, they don't get massages regularly. So I guess I was kind of wondering, is like, does that kind of like having to get that kind of work done, but also the kind of impacts that jiu-jitsu or other exercise has on your joints, is that going to be, are our joints going to hurt worse when we get older than other people?
No, again, so it depends, right? I mean, in general, if you train smart and you have a good mobility program, no, I would argue it's going to bulletproof your joints.
Okay.
You're going to, and all the stuff you're doing to get better at jiu-jitsu, like increase hip mobility and all that stuff, is only going to help other stuff like knee pain and back pain and things like that, right? So it depends on how you approach it. Again, you can just go in there and just, you know, and it's usually the younger people that do this because they feel bulletproof.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, shoot, if you are, you know, if you keep getting injured in jiu-jitsu, you need to take a look at some things.
Yeah, I would say like there's two very prominent names in jiu-jitsu, related to jiu-jitsu. And they've had some pretty severe injuries, and that's Eddie Bravo.
That's right.
And with him, it's kind of easy to see his style of grappling. Yes, he does play a lot of quarter guard and half guard, but he does get inverted a lot, and his spine is taking a beating from that.
Stacked, yeah.
He's 51 years old now.
Yeah.
And then he also came up in a very tough time.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, no doubt.
And then you have maybe the biggest proponent of jiu-jitsu, and that's Joe Rogan. And he's known for having a very hard style. Like when he grapples very hard and like front headlocks and head and arm chokes are like his go-to, and like he's going to war when he grapples. Same thing.
Yeah, and I would, just listening to him recently, I think, even the way he is talking now, I think he's very much more interested in injury prevention, recovery. Like he's taken a long time off, according to what I've heard him talk about.
Right.
But he also is a striker with the kickboxing and, just slams his legs into things,
Yeah, where he broke his own leg kicking him.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, incredibly powerful kicks.
Yeah.
So, no, again, it's like anything else. I mean, I would say it's much better to do it than not to do it, especially if you're not exercising at all. Because I've seen people get injured now in my age, and they're kind of almost done.
Right.
And it's terrible.
You wouldn't want to die without any scars, would you?
Well, then it goes downhill, though, from there, right? You have no muscle mass, you get a knee injury, you have no resilience, you're making all kinds of weird compensatory movements to try to get around and go through life, and you don't have that reserve to call upon, right? And so that's the real problem with that. I mean, I think jiu-jitsu done properly is actually a good anti-aging thing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
No.
Get out.
Well, okay, so we talk about like joint health with like our elbows, our knees, but Bill bringing up the spinal, issues.
Spinal.
How can young people who are getting into this, and even like older people who've been training, and there is a lot of inverting, how do they protect their spine or have support good spinal health, I guess, with this type of sport?
The inversion game it's going to be controversial to talk about it because a lot, it can be highly effective, right? However, is it a longevity type of a game?
Right.
It's not.
No.
I would say your inversions should be transitions and not sitting there just playing a kind of like this inverted guard.
Yeah.
I mean, grabbing out of something, or you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think you don't have to get to the point of inversion and be effective. Like grabbing and turtling and in certain ways can make it so you're avoiding full inversion. And when you know that, okay, that's just not going to be in my game, then you adapt to it. Like, let's say Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yeah.
Has, famously one full hand and then like a quarter of another. So he had to adapt his game to play overhooks and underhooks and stuff like that with that side rather than actual gi grips. You would basically do the same thing with inversions, I think. So you would do more like safer Grambies than a typical in like monkey roll.
I just personally,
you wouldn't do K guard or something like that where you have to like roll up onto your neck.
That's right. Yeah. And then it's your training partner too, because all of a sudden you're inverted, that's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you start getting stacked and, in a bad position. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, great example is I was rolling with Andrew.
I remember that
a few months ago, and he had me in an omoplata. And because and this is, we're saying this about inversions, and I'm an inverted player, right? Like I'm someone that plays those kind of games. So it's not like we're these curmudgeons that are like, you shouldn't invert ever. It's like, no, that's literally my game. But I know there's a date that ends that game for the most part. And I was in omoplata, and I went to do almost kind of like an inversion style escape. And my training partner, which was Andrew, was able to identify. I sacrificed myself a little bit and put myself into a potentially bad spot. And in the inversion, it turned into a bad spot. And I could have probably severely hurt my neck. But my training partner was looking out for me and did the right thing. I had to verbally tap.
I watched it.
You were right next to us.
Yeah, watched it.
And kind of aggressively verbally tap. And my training partner was looking out for me in that moment.
If you didn't have a 4th degree black belt you're rolling with that knows, it can recognize in a split second, hey, that's a bad position for this guy, and just had blinders on trying to smash you, that could have been bad.
Right.
And so for me, it's not a question.
I would have been about $40 million richer.
Oh my gosh. No, we had those cameras covered up right there. But it's not a question of if, but when, in my opinion.
Right.
So
I agree.
And I'm not doing that at right now. I might Granby or something like that, but I just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certain things you're just going to completely avoid.
Yeah. Yep.
Good question, Liv. We had a couple things come up on the solo episode you did about the epicondylitis.
Very good.
Thank you.
Lateral epicondylitis, yes.
Yep. And one is someone asked, this is Drew Nielsen. Does the knee have similar problems? That was all he said.
It's kind of a great question. It's a little different, but if you look at the body, these joints as analogous top to bottom. In other words, hips and shoulders are fairly similar, right? Ankles and wrists are fairly similar. Not always, but I mean, as far as the function, if you look and superimpose legs onto arms, and elbows and knees, right? It's a little different. The elbow has a little more of a range. You can flip your, hand up and down. You really can't do that with your foot. But I would say knees are even more vulnerable because they're truly a hinge. And especially if you have poor hip mobility, poor ankle mobility, knees get beat up. So not exactly the same problems, but
I wonder if the pain that he's talking about is more like an MCL, LCL kind of tightness.
Yeah, which is different than what we're talking about here.
Because that would be almost similar where you're like, I feel pain right there at almost like the joint.
Right. And so the elbow does have similar ligaments. Remember, ligaments join bone to bone. Tendons join, they're a continuation of muscle to the insertion onto a bone to help joints move, right?
Okay.
So lateral epicondylitis, we're talking about a tendon insertion. MCL, LCL, lateral collateral, medial collateral ligaments of the knee are ligaments. So it's kind of a different injury as well.
Okay.
It's not quite the same.
Wouldn't mind, Drew, if you kind of expand on what you mean by that question.
Yeah.
Like, are you having a certain kind of pain? It would be cool to kind of know a little bit more on the question.
For sure. And I think knees especially in jiu-jitsu, I think are probably one of the top injuries.
They take a beating for sure.
Yeah, just because of the nature of the joint. And people will not work on their hip mobility.
Yeah, and they'll put themselves at end ranges often.
And then your knee has to torque because you don't have the range of the hip. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, ask him. A follow-up would be good on that. A little more specific on that.
Okay. We also had someone say, I don't have any problem with moving my hand in any specific direction, but it does hurt to grip anything tightly.
Yeah. So assuming you're having pain in the lateral part of the elbow with tight gripping,
So like
assuming
the top.
Yeah, what we were talking about.
Yeah.
As opposed to the medial part. You're still, when you grip something and you're holding it, it's still an isometric contraction. So, in other words, let's say I pick up a dumbbell, a 10-pound dumbbell, and hold it out so my wrist doesn't bend, right? The dumbbell wants to pull my wrist down, right, in deflection, but I'm holding it up. So what I'm basically doing is I'm isometrically contracting the extensors of the wrist to have them stop wrist flexion, right? Does that make sense? And so you're operating the same thing. You may not have unloaded. If it's not that bad, when it's really bad, the motion will hurt. Okay. When it's present but not really, really flared up, but it's the forceful grasp that you'll feel that in. Yeah, for sure. That's a good question.
The things that you talked about to remedy these,
assuming that's where he's feeling pain with tight grip. Yeah.
Would
Same.
apply.
Same. Yeah.
Okay. Shout out to the Ordinary Hobbyist for hitting a good "that's what she said" joke in response to that guy's question.
Gosh. Luckily, he's an American citizen now. Otherwise,
he would have got shipped out.
Yeah.
Also, a question which you did answer. You went and jumped on there in your incognito account.
Yeah.
And someone asked a question for Dr. Chris. He started BJJ at 45 years old, old as dirt.
Yep.
How long did it take him to get his black belt in jiu-jitsu, training primarily 3 days a week? Because we've talked about that. You're
almost 8 years.
Yeah. And you're a consistent 3-day-a-weeker.
Yeah, and what I mentioned, I think I mentioned in reply, I also do a lot of outside studying. You know, as far as, and I'm very, very intentional about my training. Like, I really work on weaknesses. I think I gave an example of blue belt where at blue belt I stopped playing top game completely unless I swept to top game to work on my guard. So I put myself, so you can go through and just play your A game, whatever it is. And I think you're holding yourself back. If you want to progress and really get a well-rounded game, you really have to take a hard look at, it's like working out. It's like, I like doing curls. Well, you probably need to do something else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Something you don't like to do.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea, right? So not only is consistency, studying outside, being very intentional in your training.
Would you say those are the top contributing factors to be able to, one, get your black belt in a faster than average time, and just, I would say, continue the progression consistently?
And I approached jiu-jitsu like medical school when I went to med school. So you have a bunch of reference material, right? Then you're learning something. You learn something in class, then you go through all your reference material and find examples of what you're learning and look at it from a bunch of different directions. And that's really how you retain stuff instead of going from one technique to the other. Like if we're working half guard, you know, I did put a lot of investment into outside instructionals and stuff, but I use them intentionally in that if I'm working half guard or I'm developing a problem with something, I'm going to go search out solutions to that specific thing. And I'm going to stay on that thing for a couple months, right? Until it's no longer...
When you say stay on that thing?
Like let's say I'm getting smacked. You know, when I was first starting half guard at blue belt, that's when I was really starting to develop my half guard game. I was getting smashed constantly, or I was getting, you know, different things. You know, someone got chest to chest on me, I was done. You know, or across. You know, okay, well, how do I get some high percentage escapes from there? Now, how do I turn those escapes into an advantageous position to start going on the attack myself? And I'd spend a lot of time, like, you know, troubleshooting, like you do all the time. You know, even right now at black belt, like I think a couple weeks ago, I had something I was working. I want you to troubleshoot. You know, it's like, hey, what do you think about this? You're like, hey, well, what about this? That type of thing is super valuable. And that's what I mean by outside study, right? Taking your education, you know, it's like in medical school, you take all your tests and your boards and all that, but your education is up to you. You are responsible for your own education. All the information's out there. You need to do it. You know, you'll like jiu-jitsu, medicine, it's never ending. You're never going to be like, yeah, I know it.
Right.
It's always evolving, and you know, it's the same kind of thing, and staying up on it and revisiting things and being intentional. I think that was helpful. Not that I made black belt really quickly, but I mean, you know what, 8 to 10 years is kind of average. Maybe on the.
I feel like 10 is
it?
Seems like it's pretty average, if not a little bit longer.
I was a bit obsessive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can definitely.
Well, what did were you just lucky, or how did you treat if you had these scenarios where life gets in the way, injury, or you moved or something like that? Now, I know a little bit of that answer because I know your story, but
yeah.
Were you just lucky that you didn't really have many like bad injuries or life events that caused you to miss 2 months in a row?
Interesting. So also, I didn't have any. My daughter's grown out of the house. I got out of the military, so I wasn't moving around trying to go to school. You know, I made a conscious decision because I wanted to start, but I wanted to do it consistently in one place with no interruption. I started the week after I finished writing my book. I turned it into the publisher and started. I know. But I'm just telling you, because that was an outside event. You know, took so much outside time.
Right.
So then I could concentrate. Hey, this is what I'm going to concentrate on. And yeah, and I, like I said, it's just Carrie, and also my spouse joined a month later. Carrie started a month later,
big one.
it's huge because then we're both training together, talking about it.
And you kind of like, from just a relationship standpoint, this is how we had it. Like to hear your opinion. It turned into like when we drill together, it's kind of like a, I don't want to say date night, but it's like, this is just, there's no TV, there's no phones, there's no distraction. I mean, we're around friends, but you're kind of hanging out.
It's fantastic.
You know?
It's the best thing for relationships, I think, for sure. It's a shared thing. Carrie's super into it like I am.
Whatever the hobby is, if you do it together, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a time to spend with my wife. I don't have the other kind of, and honestly, I rearranged my work schedule because I had the opportunity.
That you're talking about,
yeah, because it was important enough to me that I was like, okay, I don't have childcare issues to worry about. So I had a lot of things, you know, being older that younger people may not have with, you know, growing families and stuff like that. You know, getting kids to soccer and all that. So, and I would arrange my work schedule in a way where I wouldn't be caught in work,
right,
and not being able to
Our
train.
classes start at 6 p.m. and you're like, I want to train, and you typically train Monday, Thursday during the week.
Monday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Yeah. So during the week, you're like, if I work, I am going to make class.
Yep.
Like that's just something with your work schedule that you made.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, we you know, Carrie runs her own practice, her own medical practice. Sometimes it's a little different where she, you know, she'll get caught in the clinic.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes, but for the most part, we've rearranged our life around jiu-jitsu because we love it. So I think that had a lot to do with it too.
What about the injury side?
Yeah, so I had some significant injuries. You know, as you know, I tore my adductor. No kidding, tore it. I've had shoulder injuries I've dealt with. I'm not a good role model for injuries because I'll be like, as soon as I'm feeling somewhat better.
Yeah.
I'm also lucky that I'm married to a super talented physician who shoots me up full of all kinds of regenerative stuff when I'm injured.
You are Lance Armstrong.
Yeah. Well, you know, like BPC 157, you know, all that kind of.
Well, she's at the forefront of all the
regenerative stuff,
recovery methods that you hear Rogan talk about. Like she's in the mix in all that stuff.
She sure is. She has a. So I've been.
So what'd you do when those pretty severe, you've had a couple
Well, you saw me.
Yep.
I would still come to class.
Right.
I would be wrapped up in some kind of brace. I'd hobble around, and Andrew was nice enough to have me just go around and help coach what I could.
And even if you're, let's say you were a blue belt at that time, you might not be helping coach necessarily, but you would still go.
I'd still go.
Yeah.
Because then I'm there. I'm watching.
Yeah.
You're still getting something out of that.
Right.
So maybe that just really rearranging everything in my life for a priority.
Do you think it took that to, as in you wouldn't have been able to achieve, not that you had a time, I don't think you had a timeline goal, right?
Not in my head. Matter of fact, the black belt promotion was a surprise to me.
Yeah. Like you never had a thing like, okay, I want to get it by the time I'm whatever years old.
Nope. I didn't have that at all. And that's why, matter of fact, the talk about it, you probably remember, would make me nervous. I didn't even like talking about that, right? Because that's not what I'm in it for. Of course, it's nice to have achievement.
Of course.
And what it represents, but it's not like the end all be all, right? And so I think because of that also, I didn't have anything tied to it except for I just love it, right? And it's the community for me more than anything. Like I've said multiple times, this is my new family. I haven't had anything like this since I left the military. And it's just my mental health. This is truly my mental health treatment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man.
And making that commitment is some of these commitments that you're talking about for someone that I don't know if he's interested in how the shorter than average period of time that it took you, but just being able to do it, organizing your life a little bit around it, really made that possible.
Yeah, and my promotions are always a bit of a surprise to me. Like, and almost, we've talked about this many times. I feel like, oh gosh, I'm not worthy and all that. But I realize, knowing our professor does not promote people unless I'm ready,
Right.
and he just doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
and nor should he, nor would anyone should expect that. So, you know, I don't know. And what's interesting, I think you and I are coming up on, speaking of the subject, coming up on a year exactly since we got promoted to black belt, and that's been an interesting year for me. I don't know about you.
Well, how so?
In that, I feel like I've progressed in this last year even more than any previous 2 years.
Interesting.
And I don't know why.
Huh.
Not just my own feeling.
Yeah.
As far as I've put things, pieces have fallen together this last year that, and trying new stuff. And I don't know what it is, but it's been really, really interesting that I feel like I've,
It's interesting because I would think maybe my first reaction is, well, yeah, you're not having to worry about promotions or any of this looking good for, because, you want to show that you're learning and stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you didn't really ever have those too much of a care when it, like
that wasn't never a huge deal.
as in like, yes, it's an honor to go through the system and all that, but it wasn't at the forefront in any or even close. So that
and I don't know what I don't know what it is, but I've really felt like, I mean, medicine was the same way, man. I graduated medical school. I'm like, oh shit, and I've learned so much more since then than I did, so maybe it's a little bit of that and also being able to, what it might be also. Andrew's been nice enough to allow me, I go around and help during class. Man, I think that's, and I think you can talk about this as an actual instructor for class, because you teach 2 regular classes a week. I think that's huge for solidifying what sharpening. I think that's really important for improvement too, is being able to then not only just, okay, here's the basics, but troubleshoot them. And hey, why are they having a problem here? And really I think that's helped too. So that's kind of interesting.
Teaching definitely, Andrew pointed this out for me because I think I started filling in as a purple belt like randomly.
Yeah.
But then I started teaching during Brown.
Yeah.
And he told me he feels like I had a huge spurt.
Oh, you did?
When I started being like the consistent teacher.
I can tell you as your training partner, I noticed it.
And I think
big time. Yeah.
There is definitely something to that now that I've been teaching now for about a year and a half, roughly. I would agree that teaching can be one of the biggest growth tools. And it doesn't mean you have to teach like you said, you'll help people until Carrie arrives because the clinic holds her up sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you guys will drill. Yeah. But until then, you're walking around assisting, answering questions, tightening technique for people.
And it's just because the class is so big.
Yeah.
Right.
55 people.
Yeah. So it's like, Andrew is running around. Yeah. Like, it's just helping out.
And through that, you're not running a class. You'll fill in, but you're not running a class. You're just assisting. And that's the thing where if you're a blue belt, you're a purple belt, brown, obviously, you can do that.
Yeah.
Where now you don't want to be the super sideline coach guy.
No.
But you can, especially I think at purple and up, you can start to kind of take a couple white belts under your wing a little bit.
Well, remember that whole duck thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's important to especially someone that is asking for help, to mentor some people. And I'm also a fan of, during class, sometimes pairing, purple belts with white belts and blue belts with white belts, brand new white belts. I think because that helps the upper belt too.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as the upper belt has a good attitude, right? Because
of course,
that's without saying. But some upper belts they're too busy or too cool to.
Yeah, but if they looked at it for the point of view, like you said, as this is helping me too, right? Because take a step back and like being able to do something is very different from being able to teach and troubleshoot something.
Yeah, like identifying when something's wrong.
Like why is that not working?
And there's like levels to even that.
Dude,
whether it's from a feel standpoint and then from a visual, being able to visually just sometimes I have to like put myself in the position.
I do too.
And I'm like, I can't visually tell why this person isn't tapping when they're applying a submission. And then I'll be like, okay, do it to me. And then I can feel where they need to tighten up or something like that.
Right. And if you look at someone that's been doing it for years, like Andrew, he can almost spot it instantly. He goes, oh yeah. Okay. Let's stop. Here's the problem.
And that's where the levels come in. Yeah.
That's where the levels come in. And you get better and better doing that. So I think our gym is set up to help elevate everyone in that their own professional development and growth, basically.
Yeah, because teaching will make you think about something that you do.
Like what am I doing?
You might be a purple belt and you have a black belt level triangle, or even a blue belt with a black belt level triangle. That's not. That's actually, I don't want to say common, but it definitely, you can get to a point where you have like black belt level techniques, but there's a lot of other things that need to catch up.
Yeah, sure.
But truly understanding it comes from being able to teach it, really, like, and being able to understand it so much that what happens when something is slightly off, right? Then you can adjust it. And once you understand that, and then you understand how to convey it, you truly master that position.
And different body types.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I mean, that's huge too, right? You know?
Totally. Like, recently I was showing 50-50 and attacks from the 50-50. And that's a perfect point, because when you have a long-legged person, two long-legged people, or one long-legged, one short-legged, it changes the dynamic of that position incredibly.
Yep.
And we found that out because one of the positions I was doing, it's an arm bar from 50-50, and for a long-limbed person to be able to, or someone with very bad hip mobility, for them to shallow the knee and then kick the foot to the far hip, it's like super difficult. And if they got big old flippers for feet, they have to make an adjustment before someone like me against you, we're same size.
Right.
Our legs are like perfectly and they can move easily. Yep. But if you're 6'2" with me, then, and you're going to do it to me, you have to like almost hip escape and like some other things.
Yeah, all those little nuances, right? As far as, and that really can show you, okay, you really understand the mechanics and the position if you can look at all body types and make the requisite adjustments. So that's very cool.
Right.
Yeah, but that's, I don't know, hopefully that covers a lot of stuff there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Cardio for older grapplers and how to improve high intensity threshold. So how can they improve their essentially sprinting cardio, right? I mean, with grappling, that's when people really like get crushed, is when they have a big scramble and then their wad's gone and they're done.
Well, they start going anaerobic basically.
Right.
Right. And so that's what kind of we're looking at, the high intensity threshold or lactate threshold, whatever you want to call it, where you start moving into anaerobic without oxygen zone.
So older, we're talking mid-50s and up.
Okay, so let me say something first of all. You'll get a canned answer for like, okay, you need to do high intensity interval training like assault bike or something like that. The problem is, if you're in your mid-50s and you're also trying to train jiu-jitsu, and you're doing a whole bunch of that, you can overfill the stress cup super quickly and get overtrained. So, it's tough. The biggest thing I would say that a lot of people think they have, especially you've been grappling for a while and you think you have you're just kind of,
let's say they're a blue belt,
gassing.
Yeah.
Almost always. Okay. Especially at blue belt. Okay. What I've seen is almost always they have way too much body tension.
I knew you were going down that road. I knew it. Yeah.
They're over gripping. They are also holding their breath. when they don't even know it, mouth breathing, that kind of thing. And that is the biggest thing I would do to start with. Instead of looking at external training, take a really good look and roll with someone that knows a brown black belt that can really kind of key in like, hey, what's going on here? Yeah. Monitor that body tension. Okay. Biggest thing that will dump your cardio more than anything is not your breathing irregularity and body tension.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about other stuff after that, but that would be the first thing for older folks, especially when your jiu-jitsu's still not really efficient. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean as you progress, it becomes more efficient, right?
Yep.
I still, to this day, especially when I'm like if I'm rolling with you or another tough, I have to really think, okay, relax, because especially someone that's going to push you.
You're right.
Right.
I had a good example even this weekend. There's a guy that I went to someone's open mat, and they actually recognized me from Carson's video. How about that?
The fake black belt one? Or no, the sneaky
cheater.
The cheater one?
Cheater black belt video.
Hilarious.
And he said he wanted to roll light. I was like, okay,
what does that mean?
I'll match your...
That's what I always say.
Match your pace.
I say, I'll match your pace.
Yeah. And at first it was very light. And then he started more intense. Nothing crazy, but definitely more intense. But I just kind of maintained my... all I did was like apply a little bit more pressure, like when I had pinning positions. But I wasn't really going for many subs. I, just kind of throwing little stuff at him. And then, but I noticed by the end of the round, he was tired. He was breathing heavy, sweating like crazy. I was still breathing through my nose.
That's right.
And it was, I wasn't fatigued at all. And it's one of those things where he started with the right intention, or at least for him, like he wanted to roll light. But then because maybe I got into a good position or something like that, it started ramping up again. For this person asking about cardio and stuff, try to catch yourself in that moment, which is kind of what you're saying. Try to catch yourself in that moment of over gripping and all that.
I had a new white belt that I was working with recently, and brand new. And he's like, "Oh, can you give me some pointers?" And we did a kind of, those rolls where someone brand new doesn't know any. I mean, you can't really do a full roll with them because they just don't know anything, right? So it's almost like kind of guiding them through things as we rolled. And then, I purposely got into a mount and started putting pressure on him and said, okay, stop. I want you to breathe.
Like on the diaphragm or whatever.
I said, breathe through your nose. I want you to relax in this position. Right? So that's the best thing you can do right now. Protect yourself and really breathe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's some positional things with your limbs you can do, but like...
Yeah. But it's brand new, just because the flight or fight response is just that, right? Yeah. It's just you're going to get really tense and stop, sometimes hold your breath even. See that in competition all the time.
Yeah.
People are like, breathe.
Yeah, right.
So, but that's not dodging the question. That's actually probably the first thing with that specific type of person is what I would look at first before looking at any other kind of training.
I totally agree. And like you said, there's some generic stuff like the Airdyne or assault bike and stuff like that, or even something in the pool that you could build some sort of sprinting cardio. But
if you get a pool's fan, underrated exercise is doing intervals in the pool.
But at the same time, if you are older, that cup is inevitably going to be smaller.
Yeah, I just can't, man. I really have gotten to the point where I can only do outside training outside of jiu-jitsu once a week. Yeah, and it sounds terrible, but I mean that's pretty much it. Yeah. So that's okay though.
You had a topic that you want to touch on.
Yeah. Real quick. It's not a quick thing. We may have to cut this one off. Promotions. So we're end of year. A lot of academies do promotions.
Yeah. Okay. This is the season.
I know. Our own academy, the end of the week, we're going to do promotions again. It's a great time, everyone. It's a way to recognize people's efforts and all that. So the mentality going into that, we already started talking a little bit about it previously, but what do you do if you don't really get, let's say that you were like, gosh, I really think that really means a lot to you, getting those stripes or getting a belt. How would you advise someone, let's say they didn't quite get what they were hoping for, at the end, how do you handle that, especially if you feel like, if you're a person that is really, really, very, very goal-oriented,
right?
In that, this year I need to be a 3-stripe, whatever, right?
Or the person that we're all different, but some people, they kind of need the pat on the back.
Yeah.
They're nothing wrong with that.
No.
Some people are complete opposite, but some people, they take positive encouragement from that stripe.
I get it.
Or something like that, right? That's what you're talking about.
I do. And it doesn't mean, so let's say that you don't get the promotion you were thinking I don't know.
You were just thinking maybe you're right there.
Yeah. So, and you as an instructor, and you do promote people now, man, I tell you, I was thinking about that, briefly talking with Andrew over the past couple months about, that's hard, man, as a professor.
Yeah.
Especially when you got a big academy and really looking at, because it's not just one thing. It's not just showing up. Consistency is super important.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that too. And so if you did not, if let's say you had promotions came and went and, you didn't feel like you got promoted to what you, in your own mind, what advice would you give? I shouldn't say how would you handle it, because, maybe they're thinking about things the wrong way.
Sure.
I mean, what would you say?
So I had something similar where I think it was the promotion that you got your purple belt, I think. And I had probably 5-6 people the week of. So like this week, essentially.
Yeah, right before promotion day. Yep.
Coming up to me and saying, hey, probably going to get your purple belt. Right?
Well, yeah.
Like I had a bunch of people saying that, and coming up to me and be like, hey, you're going to get your purple belt.
You're very good. You made a big jump at blue belt.
Yeah, right. Like
right.
Yeah.
So,
but that's what a couple of people are saying. And then, because I've been pretty surprised every time I got my promotion.
Yeah.
Whether it was black, just because of the timeline, I didn't, I was ready to do Master Worlds at Brown again the next year.
Yeah, for sure.
I got my Brown. I was pretty surprised with that too, because I didn't compete at purple. And anyways, and then when I got my blue belt also. Anyway, so people were saying that. And so I wasn't really thinking I was like, oh, maybe I could get my purple belt, maybe, But I didn't really think of it as I'm ready for it. Now, I think I had a bit of a jump towards the end of blue, but it was people saying that to me that put it in my head this might actually be the time.
And people that are not professors of an academy.
No, it's your training partners.
No, I know.
And I didn't get my purple belt.
Right.
And then people after were like, man, I really thought you were going to get your purple belt. I don't think I got my purple belt for another year, right?
I don't know.
I think
You were a year behind me with purple belt.
Yeah, so I went another full year.
Yeah.
So I had all that at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then I had a year of stewing on that of so am I ready for a purple belt?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in that year I got a stripe on that promotion on my blue belt, and I only got one stripe throughout the rest of the year. So I would say I've definitely dealt with those demons of, I feel like I'm progressing. Why am I not getting a piece, the thing? And it was in that time that I think I especially a purple belt, it got cemented. But in that time, I had to check myself and because it started ruining the experience a little bit of going to class.
This is where I was wanted to go. Okay.
And it was making it where, why didn't I get a stripe yet? I see other people getting stripes. Maybe people that I feel like I do decent with in sparring or whatever the case may be. What's wrong with me? And then it's very taboo to talk to your instructor about, or talk to anybody about promotions, which I understand that piece. I don't know if it should be so taboo, but I understand why it's like, hey, don't focus on it. That's the bigger reason why we don't talk about it too much, right? So I was dealing with those little bit of demons for that year. But once I just said to myself, whether I get my purple belt right now, and it's February, or I get at the end of the year, or maybe it's even longer, I'm going to be the same. I'm not going to stop at purple belt.
Right.
I'm going to keep going.
Right.
And whether that means I, get my black belt in 10 years or less or more, it's not really. Yeah. There is, like, every time I got a stripe, it always feels good.
Of course.
And it feels good to have the professor recognize you in front of your team and then the belt, and that has a meaning to it. And I treat, like, every belt, I always just looked up to, like when you start, purple belts seem unbeatable.
Oh, yeah.
They seem like gods.
Yeah.
Brown belts, you can't tell the difference between a brown and a black belt. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference between a purple and a black belt, because you're just getting your butt kicked so much and all that. But so when I got my purple belt, I was like, the imposter syndrome sets in. So I just had a year of, like, people telling me, oh, I thought you were going to get your purple belt. Then I get it, and I'm like, oh shit. I don't deserve this.
Isn't that interesting, though?
I'm immediately the worst purple belt in the room.
I think a good way of probably I should mature, a self-reflective way of approaching it, in my mind, especially if you feel like, gosh, I feel like I'm really doing my best and whatever, you can certainly talk to not only your professor, but some of the other black belts or brown belts, and like, hey, I really need to kind of take a step back and look, what do you think I could benefit from at this point?
It's a great
and
question.
Asking, not like, why didn't I get promoted? Like, hey, what do you think I could do to progress my skill?
I did that at the end of purple belt. I asked Andrew, what should I do? What should I work on and stuff like that?
Yes.
And that was when he told me, like, I need to be a little bit more stingy. Like, I default on the flowy side. So if I get swept, I just go into a guard.
Yeah.
But he felt, for me personally, I needed to develop let's say I'm starting to get swept. Don't just go into a guard.
Don't concede it.
Don't concede.
Yeah.
And that's when it stuck in my head like glue. He said, brown belts, for him, this is our professor's guidelines.
Yeah.
Some are more time oriented. Like, you got to go to a certain amount of classes. And blah, blah, blah. One of ours to become a brown belt is every moment it's a fight. As in every position that they are starting to lose.
Yeah.
So maybe their guard's getting passed. Maybe they're being put in half guard on bottom. Maybe they're getting swept. Whatever. There is a stinginess that is like where it just doesn't. You don't just get to finish the sweep or the pass. There's a tension the whole way through.
The inch by inch type of thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that's one thing that he looks at or wants you to have to be an Andrew Solheim brown belt.
Yeah.
That's just a piece of the recipe.
Yeah.
And something he looks for, especially a black belt.
Yeah.
So that stuck with me big time. And so then that became my goal, was to work on that stuff towards the end of purple belt to get into my brown.
Well, but you asked.
You're right.
And it's not like, gosh, man, it's not sour grapes. It's like, well, you generally wanted to know what I could work, what you could work on. And that's important. And so
So you asked, what would I say? I
Yeah.
sometimes the answer is just not yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have the skills of that next rank in a lot of different areas. Typically, you're not going to be a brown belt at every position and technique.
That's a good point.
You're not going to be at, like, we know we are not black belts in certain areas.
Yeah.
My close guard game is not black belt level. There might be certain parts of it, but as a grand scheme, I wouldn't say I have black belt level close guard.
And just a segue, you may have noticed it's one of the things I've been working a lot. If you watch me roll, is like stuff that I thought I suck at, relatively.
Sure.
Like close guard.
Well, your level of suck when you get to a certain point.
You know what I'm saying. It's relative, but that's, self-evaluation is hard to do because it makes you look at. No one likes to look at things that they feel like they're lacking in.
Yeah.
Just we have our own little internal thing. We like to feel good about our, but if you can step back and look at yourself that way, and not worry as much and trust the process. We have our academy is fantastic in that it's very much a meritocracy. We don't have this weird kind of, there's not like a cliquey. As a matter of fact, our professor goes out of his way to avoid these kind of cliquey type little group things where, if you're in this group, you're going to get promoted. You know what I mean? Like favoritism.
Right.
Right. So
honestly, I would say it maybe goes the other way a little bit.
What do you mean?
As in, like,
absolutely. So people that maybe he has a friend relationship with is even harder.
I'm not saying he didn't promote me to purple belt at that time because we were friends.
Yeah.
But I think he wouldn't be shy about being like, he's going to earn it. To avoid that perception.
Well, it's like the dad that's a football coach and has a kid on the team.
Right.
Yeah, but at any rate, I think what I would just tell people is this isn't a reflection of your self-worth. Okay?
Not at all.
Take a step back and take an evaluation. Are you being consistent? Maybe you're just doing the best you can with your life situation. And that's okay. It's just going to take longer. And that's all right, too.
Or physical limitations. Injuries. All that stuff comes into play, and you see other people. Everyone's different. Don't compare yourself. Because you get into, we've talked about this before, you get into that comparison mentality. That is not good for anyone. What's the quote, Liv? Theodore Roosevelt?
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Hey.
I see that everywhere now.
I love Theodore Roosevelt. I like the critic quote. That's a good one, too. What is it? She could look at. I couldn't pair it. Basically, the critic doesn't count. It's the people in there doing, out there getting their, knees bloody and face dirty that really matters.
Right.
Not someone sitting on the sidelines critiquing.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's a good. Yeah. So don't get into the comparison game.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, promotions, like, especially now in our sport, like no-gis come about, and promotions and belt rank are even less important, as we see with, we had Who's Number One recently, this weekend or last week, and Helena Craver.
Yeah,
she's a blue belt.
Right.
Technique-wise, she's not a blue belt.
Right.
In gi, she competes at blue belt. In no-gi, she's competing against black belts, and that rank didn't stop her from skill acquisition. It just creates some order. And it's good to have the goals and stuff like that, but don't put your self-worth behind the promotion. At the same time, I got tingly when I got stripes. I damn near cried when I got my brown belt and my black belt.
I know.
I completely get putting worth on it, but don't make it the end-all be-all because, like I said, sometimes it's just not yet. Your professor just wants you to because you can have tough rounds with people at the rank above you that you're close to. Like if you're a white belt, you have tough rounds with blue belts, maybe even win a couple, right? Great. But sometimes your instructor just wants you to live there a little longer. So when you do get that promotion, you're not at the bottom of the heap. You belong there.
And not only that, maybe you're doing well against a higher belt, playing your A game all the time at the detriment to developing a well-rounded jiu-jitsu skill set.
Totally.
And so I see that a lot at the lower belts where, they're like, well, I can tap this guy. Yeah, but you can do like two things. Yeah. You do them well, but you...
Right. And that's where the blue belt having a black belt level technique or whatever. That's right.
But you're not well-rounded, or you have a garbage guard.
Right.
Or whatever. I'm just,
And there could be just a couple things, like where you're good everywhere, but there's one foundational piece that you need to work on. Yep. And the only way you're going to figure that out is by rolling with your professor, because a lot of people get scared to ask their professor to roll.
Yep.
And I get that. But you got to ask them, or like you said, ask some of the other, like let's say black belts or brown belts or something like that you will roll with, that you're not scared to, and ask them, hey, what am I doing wrong? Or what can I do to do better?
What should I be working on?
Ask them before the round.
Yeah.
And they're going to evaluate you. They're going to put you in spots that you don't even realize they're allowing. And then they're going to say, oh, okay, you're flaring your elbows way too much, And that could have been the thing that, your professor is waiting for you to kind of clean up a little bit.
You're conceding a guard pass.
Something.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that'll pay off big time, because then you're actually getting immediate feedback that you can work on right away. And then the promotion happens, and you know what? You don't even think about it again.
Nope.
You don't I don't think about my stripes or promotions until we talk about it in like this kind of conversation. Yeah. You just move right on to the next. As soon as you get it, it's like a competition. As soon as you finish that competition, whether you win or lose,
it's behind you.
On Monday, you do the same thing in the gym.
That's right.
You work on what was good and what was bad. And then 2 weeks later, no one even talks about it.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, that what you said earlier. Don't let it get in your head and interrupt your training. Like, well, screw, I'm just going to quit then.
Yeah.
That's just... that's the opposite, because you're probably very close.
Yes. There's that little cartoon of the guy digging.
Yeah.
And like he's this close to the gold.
To the goal, and then he's like, ugh.
Anybody turned around?
Yep.
It's...
Same thing.
Yeah, that, especially once you commit yourself to being like, I am going to be a black belt. Yeah. If you put that in your head, these are just little stepping stones that will happen in time, and it goes faster than you think, especially if you're someone that is going consistently, whether it's 3 days a week or 10 days. It doesn't, that's just mat time.
I know.
How much mat time you can do in however the window is.
Or if you humble bragged your training partner just now on the podcast. And
I didn't say anything.
How much more mat time that you have than I
just
have.
said 3 and 10. That was pretty low key.
I didn't know you were doing 10. I thought it was 7.
Oh, shit.
2-a-days?
Look at now. He's got to defend his position.
He's offended that I would call.
I am too.
Because I used to do.
Here we go.
2-a-days, 3 days a week.
Do you still?
Only once a week.
I like how he threw out 10, though, didn't he?
He's like, what's the max number I did at any given time?
Oh, no, I did more than 10.
Just to show. Oh, yeah, I know you have. That's what's funny.
Yeah. I just
give you a heart. You have. Matter of fact,
20.
We've talked
50.
Yeah.
We've talked about that to your detriment sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah.
No,
but I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
But
it's just funny.
But whatever that frequency is, consistency is going to be the big one. And as you find out, as you train more, your friend that bowed out for 4 months and comes back, Hunter, that you are like, oh, dang.
Okay, I got a question though. Just for perspectives, because I have to imagine there are people who think this. So let's say, what would you give advice for someone who, them and their training partner they're basically like neck and neck as far as like how long they've been training, right?
Yep.
And let's say one of them competed and they did really well in a tournament. The other one didn't compete. Promotions come, and the one who didn't compete gets their blue belt. I'm just going to say
this is perfect, because I started a year before you, I think, roughly. Like when I came, you were a blue belt already.
And then
a year after me.
Yeah, the one who did well in the tournament does not get promoted to blue belt. Let's say they get their 4th stripe or whatever.
Yeah.
Like what would you tell the person who got the 4th stripe who feels that they're doing better than the person who didn't even compete, what would you tell them?
Well, competition, again, you're playing your A game,
Yeah.
right? You're playing your A game in competition. And it's great because I think, as Andrew always says, competition does accelerate your jiu-jitsu. However, you may have glaring holes in your game for whatever belt level that the professor's like, no, well, it doesn't matter what your record is in competition or whether you competed or not. A professor's looking at you objectively and looking at, well, this person has a very well-rounded guard. They have a good top game. They have solid fundamentals, kind of well-rounded, where the other person has a razor-sharp whatever and is lacking. Okay, they may have done better in competition and competed, but as a martial artist in this art, they don't have what the professor's looking for. I mean, we've seen people, we've talked about this, where you have black belts that at highest levels of world championship that are razor sharp in a couple things. They don't have the most well-rounded game. It doesn't mean they're not a black belt, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to add to what you're saying here is and something Andrew's told me many times, and I completely agree, especially after being black belt now for a year, is, and you should probably hit that little buzzer every time I do a humble brag, but
We got to give a fart noise or something.
Yeah.
That'd be even better. Go ahead.
That was good. So,
Just be on it, Liv.
not always the better jiu-jitsu person wins in competition. So just because that person that you feel like whoever we're talking to is like neck and neck, but a little rank-wise is behind, does better at competition than the person that got promoted, that doesn't, like, some people are just good at competing.
That's correct.
It doesn't mean you are better at jiu-jitsu, which you're just better in this window of competition.
That's true.
Humble brag. I have not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a preface.
I have a good competition record.
Yeah.
I don't think, I know I am not at the top of like the black belts, but my competition record is good. And not just at black belt, but like throughout.
Yeah.
So but that doesn't mean, especially after Andrew like really nailed this home on me of like, and this is why competition is very good and you will get better mainly due to the lead up of competition, not the actual competition.
That's right. That's right.
But the results you don't have to hold on to whether you win or lose. Because some people are just really like good at competing. The opposite of that, there's a guy named Jason Rao.
Oh, yeah.
He's known as being the best leg locker in the world.
Yeah.
Craig Jones.
You said about Matt Serra's, right?
He has his own gym, but yeah, he's
But that's
that lineage.
The Henzo,
Yep.
Matt Serra. Okay.
Nicky Ryan, Craig Jones, Gordon Ryan, John Danaher, Gianni Grippo, all of basically a lot of these East Coasters that have trained there have all said he is the best leg locker they've ever gone at. Him and like Eddie Cummins usually.
Yeah.
But Eddie doesn't train anymore. So Jason Rao does not have an impressive competition record at all.
Right.
Honestly. Another person that people talk about is Gabriel Argis. People talk about him having some of the Gabriel Argis has some of the most impressive technique and technical abilities than anyone, like Humble Bahal, Keenan Cornelius, Andre Goval, I remember said that about him, Edwin Najmi. They all said that Gabriel Argis is like another level, but he doesn't have the competition record you would think by someone that is talked about in that way.
Interesting.
Nicky Ryan, honestly, even another person.
Oh, for sure.
So don't put all that weight into the competition and the results and stuff.
What were you going to say? You were going to mention something about perfect example that you started.
Oh, because I said my competition record's good.
And you said you started a year after me. What was the point?
In that moment of you got your purple belt and I didn't get my purple belt. But I think I competed at.
I see.
You know, and like that's like something where it's like, okay, I progressed well, and I feel like I was doing good with a lot of training partners, and people were telling me I should have got promoted.
I see.
Or they expected me to. And then other people that started at similar time as me. And who else I don't remember who else got promoted that day. But I didn't, and other people did.
I think me and Raj.
I'm sure there was a bunch of people. Oh, Rajna, yeah, that was another one. I started when she was a blue belt, but we started at the same gym,
Right.
Pre-Cascade. So
I was just setting you up, see if you're going to say something douchey, but you didn't.
well, I really wanted to do something like that. Just tee me up.
I was.
But it's one of those things where you don't let that get into your mind.
Yeah.
Don't let that get into your mind.
So-
it's going to ruin your experience of the thing that you do for fun.
And anybody listen to this, just don't make this is not reflective of.
Stop being a little bitch.
No.
Sorry, I'm just joking.
Wow.
I'm just joking.
I was trying to be like
I know.
more of a cheerleader.
Encouraging.
I was like,
just joking.
this isn't your self-worth, okay? Keep doing it. Your promotions will take care of themselves, especially if you have a good conscientious professor.
Yeah.
They will. And you're going
And
to
it's hard for a professor, especially for the striping part.
Oh my gosh.
It is hard if you have classes that are bigger than 25 people.
Yeah.
Our day classes have started today I think we were only at 18.
Mm-hmm.
But last week and the week before we were in like 22s, 24, 26 I think on one of them.
Yeah.
To try and gauge that is extremely difficult for an instructor. So 20, 25 and up, you have to give your instructor some grace because it is very difficult to keep track completely accurately when you should get a stripe and all that. My personal thing is I don't even think stripes are super necessary after blue belt. Like purple belt and on.
Sure.
I understand why we do it.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about, there's some people that kind of need that pat on the
it's
back.
cool. Yeah.
That's great. That's totally fine. But if you're a purple belt, you're in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You understand what that quote-unquote finish line of black belt looks like and feels like and what it will take for the most part. A stripe shouldn't be the thing that motivates you to keep going.
That's right.
At that point.
And I think that sums it up very well.
No.
Yeah. We just, it's,
Good question.
I hear about this all the time though. And I hear people complain and it's
Yeah.
like, just kind of just do some self-reflection.
Yeah. And the whole don't be a bitch thing, I was just joking. I've been that bitch. Of the one that's like have literally like stewed in bed or on the
So
drive
many
home.
comments that I could say right now.
How dare you?
Is there any
Being vulnerable.
kind of like a TLDR of sum up the message of what you would tell someone who's right
it's so
now
stereotypical. Don't focus on it. Don't focus on the promotion will come. You will get your promotion and it will be behind you and you won't even think about it. And then you're just going to look to the next one. Don't compare to other people in the training room. Everyone's got their own freaking journey.
And be happy for the people getting promoted.
Yes.
Be part of that celebration.
Literally, because what's going to happen,
Yeah.
you're going to see your partner that is your friend, that you have helped them and they have helped you.
Absolutely. And you should feel good about that too.
Yes. Don't let your jealousy and envy and pride get in the way from the fellowship and the camaraderie that you have with your teammates and friends.
Oh, I like it. Let's snapshot that one. That's a good one. You have some good ones every once in a while.
Call me
dude.
Aristotle, bro. Plato's closet.
that's not it.
That's not the closet you're in, my friend. Oh, man. Yeah, please.
We're outta here.
We got to get out of here. We're going to get in trouble.
I can't one out.
What did?
This one.
What
This one.
What happened?
is dead?
The camera?
Yeah.
Okay, go to this one. See you later.
And
Go to Chris's.
we're going to do, coming up soon, some neck injury stuff. So stay tuned.
Later, y'all.
Later.
That one went down.
Literally.